Hi everyone, welcome again to another episode of Good Day Chula Vista, and this is episode 52 if I am correct. And today we have Jason here with us. He's an attorney here, local attorney, and he has a specialty, so please stay with us. It's great. We're good? Okay. Thank you guys for joining us. We're excited to have you here on another episode. And before we get started, I want to apologize we gave some tickets 3 weeks ago. We gave some Padre tickets to two of our clients on our anniversary show. And they had some issues when they got to the game. I guess there were multiple tickets for the same seats. So we are gonna definitely buy you tickets again, or we're gonna reimburse you the money so you can go again. And we apologize. Our broker and our managers are so embarrassed because those were donated by Cobo Banker West. So they wanted to make it more special. It was easier for them to do a gift card, but they wanted to make it special and bring people to the game, and that happens. That happens when you buy them online. But anyways, now let's get started with the show. We have Jason here, and please share the video on your page right now. We're going to be talking about BK. He's also a real estate attorney, so please stay with us. We have a really good interview. So thank you for joining us.
Sure, great to be here. Thank
Jason,
you.
What is the name of your law group?
It's the J.Turner Law Group.
Okay.
I'm Jason Turner, and I'm the founder, and I'm the principal of the law
Great.
firm.
So I know you were referred to us by one of our friends also that was also here before. And tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I've been in practice for almost 27 years. Graduated from University of California, Hastings College of Law up in the Bay Area. And I live out here in East Lake as well with my wife and two children. We've lived in the San Diego area for about 15 years.
Great, you're local.
Yeah. And my office is also here in East Lake, just a few blocks away from your office.
Great.
And my practice areas are bankruptcy and real estate and tax work.
Okay, also tax. That's great. Wow. So you have a little bit of everything, because real estate and then the tax and then also the bankruptcy, which is like a big one. I'm sure it was huge in 2010, 2012, right?
Yes, exactly.
Let me have this. Thank you. So we have this here, just so you know, and we'll be seeing everybody that joins, and then
okay.
they'll ask questions if they have any questions. So we'll review that later.
Yeah.
But there you are.
Great.
Okay, so we'll just keep this here. Jason, and you have two kids. You said how old are they?
My daughter is 18. My son is 12.
Oh, okay. So you still have a teenager.
Yes, and another who's almost a teenager.
Oh, wow.
They're wonderful.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And okay, so then let's start with some of the questions. We do have, bankruptcies have a lot to do with real estate, because people that want to buy a house, they want to know what happens if you do a bankruptcy, or they had a house and they're going through a financial situation and hardship, and they don't know if they should do a BK. So we have some questions here, I think, that you put together with us, and hopefully this will cover what most of you guys want to know. But if not, if you guys have another question, please type it below our video right now, and we'll go over them at the end of the show. Remember, if you make a comment, you say hi, let us know where you're watching from, what city. Are you here in Chula Vista, National City, where you're watching from? You will be entered into the drawing today, and we're giving out 2 Starbucks gift cards, okay? So let's start with the basic question. What is bankruptcy, and will the process wipe out all my debts?
Okay, bankruptcy is a part of federal law, established by Congress, and the whole purpose of the bankruptcy system is for individuals or even small businesses who qualify for bankruptcy relief to get a fresh start. It's something that actually goes back to the beginning of the country. The founding fathers built it into the Constitution because they recognized that for the economy to grow, people have to take risks. Sometimes risks work out, sometimes they don't, but they will need a fresh start if things do not work out. And so we have the system in place on the federal, so it's basically the same throughout the country. And it broadly can help wipe out a lot of debts. There are some exceptions. Types of debts that are not wiped out or eliminated are like child support, spousal support obligations, student loans. That's increasingly a big one with so much student loan debt around. Recent taxes. Also, if someone owes from their business, or then they had a sole proprietorship, if they owe sales tax or payroll taxes, those are not dischargeable. But broadly speaking, other debts, they can be wiped out.
That's awesome. So what is now, is the stigma around bankruptcy keeping people from taking advantage of what could be the best option to address financial troubles?
Yes, in a word, yes. There certainly is a lot of stigma. I think I found I represent clients across many economic levels, many cultures. There are many cultures throughout our country where filing for bankruptcy is seen as something, it's like an admission of failure, or it's something scandalous. And the reality is that if someone has a lot of debt and they cannot afford to reasonably to pay it back, they have really two choices. Either they're going to struggle with it and be saddled down with it for a long, long time and never move forward, or they take some steps to protect themselves and to use the legal system
to their advantage.
Exactly, to their rights under the bankruptcy system. When I talk to, say, new clients, and they're worried, many feel that stigma. I mention a few names like Abraham Lincoln, Harry Truman, Henry Ford, H.J. Heinz, founded the ketchup company. They all filed for bankruptcy at some point in their careers, usually early on, because they'd started a business and it failed and they had all this debt. And if they had not filed for bankruptcy, our country would be so different. We wouldn't have all of the achievements that they later were able to do.
Right. So that was a good example. It's if you say it's even in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So that tells you it's there for a reason, and I think sometimes it's a matter of pride. Do you agree?
That's also another element. Pride, and it can sometimes be their own pride, and also maybe their family feels like, oh, you better not file for bankruptcy because then everyone will find out and somehow we'll all look bad. But the question is, what does a person need to do to take care of themselves, to take care of their family, so they really can move forward financially and so forth?
Right. I think really putting those examples of somebody else that has done it, some people that are respected and known, and seeing that they work for them, it really helps them feel at ease doing this. I know that when I did a bankruptcy after the crash of the market, because I had a lot of property that I had bought with those 100% loans, and at the time it seemed like a good idea, and it was a risk that I was taking, and then the market crashed, and of course, I was inexperienced, and it happened to even the people that were experienced, and they they had been doing this for years, and my only way to clean my record was to do a bankruptcy.
Right.
And I think that by doing that, I was able to help a lot of clients, because I would always tell them, I did it. I did it, and I started again, and look, nothing happened. Everybody has the same respect for me, or, they still like me.
Yeah. And you're successful, and you can move forward, or you have moved forward.
Right. I think, like you said, they were created for people to take risks, and if it doesn't work out, they'll forgive you and let you start all over again without having to pay all those people back.
Yeah.
All right. So so what are the different types of bankruptcy?
Well, for individuals, the two main types of bankruptcy are Chapter 7 or Chapter 13.
Okay.
Chapter 7, in a nutshell, the differences are Chapter 7 is the simpler kind of bankruptcy, and in that the process usually takes about 3 months. And the person files their Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They list all their debts. They list all the assets they own. And the debts, like unsecured debts, like credit cards and medical bills and maybe personal loans, those just get wiped out without any further payment necessary. If someone has a house, they can keep it if they can keep up with the payments. If they have a car,
Mm-hmm.
with a car loan, the same thing. Keep the lender happy on
Right.
those secured debts.
Yes.
And in Chapter 7, if the only issue sometimes is how much in assets there are. And vast majority of my cases with Chapter 7, people don't have a lot of assets. Maybe they have a little equity in their house. Maybe they have a 401k. And we can protect those. Nothing happens to them.
Okay, that's great to know.
So that's...
the 401k is not going to be affected. They're not
No.
going to make you pull it out to pay all those.
No. And very often I have clients, they've come to me and they're getting calls all the time from creditors, and the creditors saying, oh, do you have a 401k? Well, why don't you,
Get a loan from there.
Yeah, get a loan, pull some money out of there to pay us, and or else we'll sue you. And the reality is that they have other options other than just doing what that creditor is demanding.
Saying. Yeah, you know what? It's really important that when you guys are in that situation, you might think, oh no, well, I have to pay it back. There's no way they can forgive me all these things. And it's always important that you meet with an attorney and have them look at your options, because you hear so many things from your uncle, from your cousin, from your neighbor, horror stories. People like drama, and they're gonna only talk about the drama. So you want to make sure you talk to somebody that has done it many times, somebody that has done bankruptcies for someone else many, many times, not somebody that heard about it. So keep that in mind, because it's true. Like a lot of people, when I was doing the short sales, for example, and I would tell them, like, you can do a short sale. The bank is going to forgive you the money, and then you can do a bankruptcy after if you wanted to clear, like, the car payment and all your repos. A lot of people had to return their cars and stuff.
Yes.
And I would find out by the time I got there, the time they called me, they had already gotten a loan from their 401k, so they had that payment now, and they were trying to survive. And don't let it get to that point. Meet an attorney before you're like all the way up to here. You want to have, like he said, there's options. So there's a way that our government has set things, so you'll be fine. There's options.
Yeah. Now, the other type of bankruptcy is Chapter 13, and that works a little differently. And in that, the person files their case. They list all their debts. They list all of their assets, and then they propose to the court a payment plan for 3 to 5 years, where they're paying their what's technically called the disposable income. That's their available income after they pay their mortgage, their food, utilities, all of that. Every month, that disposable income they pay to a Chapter 13 trustee, who then distributes it to their unsecured creditors. And so the unsecured creditors, through that plan, they'll get usually pennies on the dollar, or a portion of those debts. And that works well for people who don't qualify for Chapter 7, or maybe they have considerable assets with a lot of equity that they might lose in a Chapter 7, or if and this was a big thing several years ago when property values were lower. If somebody has 2 loans on their house and the value is worth less than the first loan, when the property values are really crashed, upside down. In Chapter 13, they can wipe out that second loan, that junior loan, turn it into unsecured debt, and get it off of the title to the house. And that's a very powerful way to help their bottom line. Also, we may get into this in a few minutes about stopping a foreclosure. Chapter 13 is a really powerful way to stop the foreclosure and to save the house.
Right. Okay. So I remember doing that when we were doing the short sales. So since we're talking about that, I have one question. So let's say my second mortgage, it's included in my bankruptcy Chapter 13.
Yeah.
And then I'm selling 3 years down the road. Do I have to pay him? Because let's say the property goes up in value and now there's enough to pay both loans, but that one was included in the bankruptcy. Would I have to pay it? Because I know they still keep that lien. They take it off me, but they keep the lien on the property.
Well, in Chapter 13, they're doing both. They're wiping out your personal liability, and they're taking the lien off
the property as
the
well.
property for that junior lien if the value was low, below the first loan.
Okay.
So let's say I own a house and I have a $400,000 mortgage and a $100,000 HELOC, line of credit, and I have to file for bankruptcy, and the value of the house at the time is only worth $350,000. So then I can wipe that $100,000 HELOC off, but it only comes off if I complete my entire Chapter 13.
Okay, so it has
So
to be.
whether it's between 3 and 5 years of payments, if I faithfully complete all of those, and then I get my discharge order from the court, then that second loan comes off. And then at that point, it's no longer an encumbrance, and it no longer affects
The property
like if
or
I sell
your-
it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Okay, so not everybody qualifies, obviously, for this bankruptcy. What are,
Right.
what is the most common thing that way somebody wouldn't qualify?
Well, usually if they filed recently, because there's, like with Chapter 7s, you can only file and get a Chapter 7 discharge once every 8 years. So, and that's the way that Congress wrote it, and it's,
Right.
it's the balance
Makes
between
sense.
debtors and creditors. Also, if somebody has a lot of assets and they don't want to do a Chapter 13, if they have a lot of assets where there's equity and it's not exempt, and exempt is a technical term where we can protect some assets like a 401k. But if they have a lot of non-exempt assets which might be liquidated in a Chapter 7, and they don't want that to happen, then bankruptcy may not be the right thing, especially if they don't want to do a Chapter 13, because that works a little differently, and they can save those assets, but they're in that 3 to 5 year plan.
Okay, that's good to know. But still, meet with an attorney. They are the ones that are gonna tell you if it's a good idea for you to do bankruptcy. I hear sometimes, I was talking to a friend a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me he wanted to do a bankruptcy, and I was like, how much do you owe, right? And I think he said $15,000, right? And I was like, okay, well, if you make $15,000 a year, I just thought, well, then maybe it's a good idea to do bankruptcy, because you're not going to be able to pay it. But if you make $40,000 a year, I'm like, I don't think you even qualify for bankruptcy if you only owe $15,000.
No, they would qualify. All things being equal, if they didn't file a
Right.
bankruptcy recently, if that was all like credit card debt, somebody making $40,000, in the reality is in San Diego, they don't have a lot of money left over every month,
Right.
and so they're probably really struggling, even just to make the minimum payments on those
The
credit
cards,
cards. So they would be eligible. When I talk to somebody, we look at the total amount of debt. And do sort of a balance. Is it worth it right now to say do a Chapter 7? Sometimes somebody's making $40,000, $50,000. They have debt that realistically they won't be able to pay off anytime soon. Bankruptcy may be a good option.
Yeah, to start with good credit, because as soon as you do the bankruptcy, then you start with a clear
Yes.
account and clear credit, and then you can start making points again, and it's amazing.
Exactly.
It goes up really quick.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so which bankruptcy option will allow me to keep my property? So that was Chapter 13.
13.
And 7.
Well, yes and yes. If I have a house and I'm not behind on payments, but I got a lot of other debt,
Right.
And I don't have a lot of equity, like if I have less than $100,000 of equity in my house, Chapter 7 is a good option because I can wipe out all of that other debt so I can focus on paying my
And you
mortgage.
can keep your house.
I
They're
keep
not
my
going to make you
mortgage.
sell it, even though you
Right.
have $100,000 equity.
Right.
Okay.
Because you get you're entitled to a homestead exemption,
Oh, okay.
and usually it's $100,000 for like somebody with a family in their home. However, let's say that I have a mortgage, but I'm behind 6, 12, 18 months. And so now they've started a foreclosure. And I don't have enough money to fully pay all of the arrearages. And maybe I also have that other debt that's hanging out there. Chapter 7 will temporarily halt the foreclosure, but it won't permanently stop it. Because in Chapter 7, we can get the unsecured debt wiped out, but if I don't have a quick way to make the lender happy, they can go to the bankruptcy court and simply ask for permission to restart the foreclosure process. And so the Chapter 7 is like a temporary Band-Aid for the foreclosure. However, with Chapter 13, let's say again, I have a mortgage and I'm 12 months behind, and the foreclosure has already started. In Chapter 13, we talked about a plan of 3 to 5 years. Well, in my plan, I can propose that I'm going to pay all of those arrearages, that's 12 months of arrearages, spread out through the 3-year or the 5-year plan. And if the bankruptcy court says yes, that's fine, and they see that I have enough money to pay that, then I'm good. And I can permanently stop the foreclosure that way and save my house.
Catch up on your payments.
Exactly.
On an agreement
I still have to make the new ongoing regular monthly payments to the lender.
Yeah, and catch up on the late one.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, but you have 3 to 5 years, whatever the judge gave you.
Right.
Right, because it's not up to the bank. It's pretty much up to the judge, right?
Yes, and the judges follow the Bankruptcy Code, which makes it very clear as to what my rights are if I'm filing a Chapter 13. That I can, I can propose in a plan all of these ways to catch up on things.
Yeah, because I know sometimes people think that it's more scary to go see the judge, but sometimes it works to your benefit better sometimes than trying to work with the bank.
Yeah, and especially if someone they don't just have a foreclosure problem. They got every day they're getting 6, 7, 10 calls from other creditors. They're behind on this and that, and eventually, human nature is, if we're getting bombarded with all of these calls and all of these threats, we're going to get defensive, and we're not going to make good decisions because we're just going to be defensive and afraid. And creditors take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And the bankruptcy system is a way not to get off scot-free, but to level the playing field.
Yes.
So I owe debts, I've got creditors, they have their legal rights, but now I file for bankruptcy and I'm leveling the playing field. So I can deal with them sort of equal.
And then also once they start with the process of bankruptcy and they have retained an attorney, they cannot call you anymore. They have to stop harassing you. I remember when I was going through that and I hadn't filed yet. And I remember one time, I think my son answered the phone and he called me on my cell phone because I had called the house. And he said, Mom, they said they're going to come and arrest you. And I'm like, oh my God, like these creditors, they were even threatening my kids. And, obviously because I knew that nothing was going to happen. But, imagine my son, he's hearing that, he's really believing that, he's calling me on my cell phone, thinking that's going to happen. So that's the extreme that some of these creditors go.
Yes.
And if you're not very informed, you might believe them. So once you hired an attorney and you retain them, those calls have to stop. You can just give them your attorney's number. And it's amazingly, once you tell them you have an attorney, they'll ask you for the name. You give them the name and they just take you off that list. They don't call you. They know better. Yeah.
And it's a violation of federal law if they keep calling. And I've had a few cases where I've had to sue the creditor. After we filed the bankruptcy, they're still calling, harassing, doing all kinds of bad things, and we have to sue them. And if we win, then we get a judgment against the creditor and maybe some attorney's fees for myself.
Good.
For my work there. And
it's a lesson for all the other ones that are probably watching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can help level the playing field for my clients.
Right. That was great to have an attorney next to us.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next question. The question it is number 6. Is it possible to buy a home after bankruptcy filing?
Well, after the bankruptcy case is closed, it's up to different mortgage lending underwriting rules. I'm not an expert on those. My general understanding is yes. Some say 2 years after a bankruptcy, like I think the VA says 2 years after a bankruptcy, if everything else since then is clean, you have good income, etc., then yeah. Some it's 3 years.
Right.
So.
And then for some it's 7 years. It depends. And that was foreclosure FHA. I think it was like 7 years.
Oh,
before.
okay.
But you know what? For those questions about the loan, how many years you have to wait, we recommend that you talk to one of our lenders. Stephanie Puente is one of our lenders, and she'll be happy to answer those questions for you if you need to know once I do my bankruptcy, how many years do I have to wait and what are my options to purchasing a home after. So there is a way. I bought a home after, so I know it's possible. But we don't know exactly the rules because we're not lenders, but we do have lenders available.
One thing I will add is, Faby, people come to me and they sometimes say, oh, I heard that if I file for bankruptcy and creditors are telling me I better not file bankruptcy because it's going to be on my record for 10 years. Is that true? And for in terms of credit reports, yes, generally a bankruptcy, I think even a foreclosure will be on there for up to 10 years. But that does not ruin your credit for 10 years.
Right.
Your credit, like you said, will immediately after a bankruptcy is closed, it'll start repairing itself and getting better and better.
Yeah, you start getting more points. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get to, I think I was, after a year and a half, I was already over 700 points after my BK. So it just depends what you're doing. I mean, obviously you have to do things to get those points every month, but you can get it up there. And it's true. I'm glad you said that because it does stay on your credit, but it doesn't affect your score anymore. And you can still buy. So people, your lenders will see it there, or if you apply to get a car or a credit card, they will see it, but then they will see your points. So they look at what has been happening on your credit. So even though it's there, it doesn't really affect your credit score anymore.
Right.
Right. All right, let's go. This is all very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
How long do I have to wait after a bankruptcy before I can get approved for another mortgage loan? Well, I think that's pretty much the
What we were
same,
talking
the
about.
same one. If a person has a job with security clearance, and will they lose their security clearance if they file for bankruptcy?
That's a good question. And I've had many clients because here in San Diego we have many people who work or they're service members or they work for a defense contractor that serves the military bases and they have a security clearance. Security clearances can be jeopardized if somebody has financial problems that they don't resolve, that they don't fix. So they've got creditors suing them or they're way behind on things. And if the Defense Department discovers that, then
You might lose your security.
Exactly, because that person is
Clearance.
perceived, maybe they're vulnerable to taking bribes or something.
Right, you won't make good decisions when you're stressed like that, financially stressed.
Exactly. What bankruptcy does, however, is it resolves those financial issues. So that is what essentially the Defense Department is looking for. They're looking for that the service member or the defense contractor employee is solving those financial problems.
Yeah.
And I have had many cases where a client has security clearance and they keep it, no questions. Sometimes we'll get a question from the Defense Department. We address that. We explain what we've done. We explain that my client, as a service member or as a defense contractor, they're just using their legal rights,
Right.
like anybody else in America, to take care of their debts.
Like our president.
Well, yes, yeah, that too, and the Defense Department recognizes there's no threat to the security
Yeah, they're
clearance,
being
so they keep
proactive.
it.
They're fixing their problems.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, so they won't lose their security clearance. That's good to know. I know that was one of the things also when we were doing the short sales. Like, oh my God, if I do it for closure, I want to do the sale and close my short sale. They were always afraid of losing because they could lose their job, right? If they lose the clearance.
Yeah,
for-
exactly.
So, can taxes or student loans be wiped out in a bankruptcy? I know you said that at the beginning, but let's cover that again.
All right. Let's talk first of all about taxes. Different kinds of taxes. There's income taxes that we all pay on our income. There's payroll taxes if I'm an employer and I'm collecting payroll taxes that I have to pay from my workers. There's sales tax if I have a retail business, and the bankruptcy law deals with all of them a little differently.
Property taxes as well.
Property taxes, yes. Although those are secured by the property, so those usually get taken care of.
Whoever's
one
going
way
to
or
keep
the
that
other.
house.
Yeah, exactly. But with the simple rule is with sales tax, it's not dischargeable, because the theory is if I have a business, a deli or something, I'm collecting sales tax and I didn't pay that to the state. Well, I've been holding that money in trust from the customers, and I need to pay that. So that's never dischargeable. Same thing is true with a lot of payroll taxes. Like if I'm withholding from
Social
my
Security and all those stuff. Yeah.
exactly from my workers' earnings, and I don't pay that to the IRS. or the EDD, that's not dischargeable.
Mm-hmm.
However, something like income tax, they can be discharged if there are three. It's a three-part test. We lawyers, we talk about tests and, okay, do you meet this test? And this is one of those areas. There's a three-part test. First of all, was the tax from a year that was more than 3 years ago, prior to the bankruptcy? Second of all, did they file their tax return for that year more than 2 years ago? And then thirdly, was this tax assessed by the IRS a long time ago, like more than 8 months ago? Or was it just because of a recent audit? If it is for a tax year more than 3 years ago, they filed their tax return more than 2 years ago, and the assessment is more than 8 months old, then yes, they can get it wiped out.
Oh, wow.
And most of the time, the Franchise Tax Board, the IRS, they understand these rules, and they when we file a bankruptcy afterwards, they clear it out on their system. Sometimes they don't quite see it right, and I have to go back and push them to see what the law says.
Right.
But
remind them.
Yes, exactly. and then we take care of them.
No wonder they're on it like right away. They don't want to wait those 2 years, right? When you owe money, when you owe taxes, they're on it immediately.
Yeah. Now, sometimes clients have taxes that are going to be dischargeable, because they meet that three-part test. But they also have taxes that are non-dischargeable. Like, let's say I owe taxes, income taxes for the last 5 years. Well, the old years might be dischargeable. The last 3 years, not dischargeable. So what do? In Chapter 7, okay, wipe out those old taxes, and then after the bankruptcy, I still got to deal with the IRS. Set up a payment plan or do an offer in compromise. And my office works with clients on those, just directly with the IRS outside of the bankruptcy at times. Or
to set the payment plans with them?
Set the payment plan or do an offer in compromise, which is a settlement
Okay.
with the IRS. Outside of the bankruptcy or court
Right.
system, is just an IRS administrative system. And another way, if I owe a lot of non-dischargeable taxes, sometimes it works to actually file a Chapter 13, because in a 13, I get those dischargeable taxes wiped out, and I can set up, if it works with my finances, I can set up a payment plan in my Chapter 13 plan to pay those non-dischargeable taxes. Again, so the goal is, at the end of the Chapter 13, I don't owe any debt.
Yeah.
I get a real fresh start.
Right.
I don't have the IRS chasing me, levying my wages, all that bad stuff.
Are they paying interest when let's say they have a payment plan with the IRS through the Chapter 13? Is there interest being charged?
The IRS is permitted to charge a small amount of interest.
What's like on an average that you've seen?
Well, right now I think it's between 4% and 7% per year. So it's
That's not that low.
No, it's not that low. It's not great, but it certainly beats.
It's better than a private lender.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So so they can and then student loans. Let's talk a little bit about the student loans.
Yeah. In general, student loans are non-dischargeable, and
why do you think that is?
Good question. It's not because student loans are not a big problem. It's a huge problem. It's going to be the next mortgage bubble crisis. It's not even.
Like it is going to be.
It's not. That plenty of people who have student loan debt are just suffering. They've got their monthly payments are huge. The reason is lobbying. 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when the Bankruptcy Code was being changed by Congress, the student lending industry lobbied Congress really, really hard to carve out an exception to say student loans generally not dischargeable. It's not about principles. It's not about, this student loans is somehow more valuable than other debt. It was just lobbying. And we're stuck with that in the law unless Congress changes it. So the general rule is student loan debt for college debt, even if it's not my debt, but I co-signed for my child or a brother or sister, not dischargeable. there are exceptions, and that is if I owe the debt, but I become disabled, or I'm near retirement, and my income is permanently going to go down, then there's a hardship discharge available.
Okay, so that would be only in those
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah, it's pretty limited, unfortunately.
Right. Wow, yeah, that's sad because they want to take the risk. I'm gonna go to college and study this, and I'm taking the risk. But yeah, this time is not gonna be.
But sometimes the bankruptcy is still useful because if I have a lot of student debt, but I also have a lot of other debt, a bankruptcy can wipe out that other debt. So now I can focus on paying down my student loan debt,
Right.
which is good for everybody.
Or get on a payment plan with everything together
yes,
for
yes.
the chapter 13.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely. If you're in that situation, I highly recommend that you sit with Jason and just go over your options, because it's when people are going through that, like, it affects everything in their life.
Yeah.
Their relationships, their health, and even their performance at work.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
I have friends losing hair. I remember when we all went through it in 2008, us in real estate. So it was really scary, and I remember, we couldn't focus on selling because we were like, oh my God, how are we gonna get out of all these debt? So once, we did the bankruptcy, it was just nice to be like, well, I'm free, I can start again.
There's the movie Frozen, the Disney movie,
Uh-huh.
and there's a song in there, I think, where the trolls are singing, everyone makes bad decisions when they're mad or sad or scared.
Uh-huh.
And that's exactly the situation
Right.
when someone has a lot of debt, they don't have any solutions, and they're getting pressure constantly, bombarded with calls and threats.
And they isolate themselves.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
isolate. They don't want to tell anyone. And it gets to the point, I can tell from experience myself, it gets to the point that you don't even open your mail.
Yeah.
You just from the mailbox to a box, and you're like, you know what, I'm not even going to bother with it. So Claudia's laughing. She's probably been there. So it's important. You know what, there's options, and it's amazing how, just by talking to an attorney and hearing your options, and even if it's not going to be fixed in 1 week, at least like, okay, it's going to be fixed by this day, and
Right.
you're working on it.
Right. And the earlier in the life cycle of debt that someone talks to me, the better, because usually the more options they have.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody is starting to fall behind on their mortgage, 1 month, 2 months, well, there's more that we can do than if they call me 5 days before the sale.
Mm-hmm.
We may still, in many cases, save the property, but becomes more expensive. There may be fewer things we can do within like a Chapter 13, but
Right.
it's still manageable, but it would have been more manageable earlier on in the process. And so
Right.
one of my recommendations in general when I'm do presentations or I'm talking to people is give me a call early in the process when it looks like, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to make it here financially. I don't know what to do. Maybe it'll be okay, maybe it won't. That's a good time to talk to me.
Right. Okay. Good point. And so, okay, let's say somebody decided to call you and say, okay, I'm going to talk to Jason and see what my options are.
Mhm.
What are the fees, or what are your payment options?
Well, first,
Because that's
half
probably
hour?
one of the reasons they don't want to go. They're like, I'm already broke. I can't afford
Yeah.
an attorney.
Yeah. And the first half hour of consultation I don't charge for.
Oh, that's great.
And after that, with Chapter 7, it's a range where it's usually, I'll give a range, but sometimes there are cases that are
Yeah,
less than,
they're
sometimes they're more complicated. But usually the $1,500 to $2,000 range plus the filing fees. With the Chapter 7, I ask for full payment before we file the case,
Right.
and that is because if I file the case for a client and they still owe me money, then I become one of their creditors. And I don't want to be both their creditor and their attorney at the same time.
Right.
So
That would be tough, defending them, and you're included
yeah,
in them.
yeah, it's a dischargeable debt.
Right.
So we take care of my fees before we file. With Chapter 13, it's actually a little different, and it costs more than a Chapter 7 because there's much more work.
Right. Yeah. More appointments.
But I'll charge only part of it up front because the rest of it I can get paid through the Chapter 13 plan, and that makes it a little more user friendly for the clients.
That's good to know. Yeah, I remember when I was gonna do my BK and I told my CPA, like, oh, I'm gonna file BK, and I remember he'd look, I'm like, I'm paying you right now before I leave. I was telling him,
Yeah.
don't worry, you're not gonna be included. Just
Yeah.
want to tell you so you can tell me what I need to do here. Let me see if I have any other questions. So, okay, we don't have the other ones here, but I wanted to ask you about, I know you're a real estate attorney as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So tell me, like, when would I need, me as a realtor, when would I need a real estate attorney?
I can help where they don't have financial problems, they're doing well, but they've got a property or they've got several properties, and there's an issue that realistically a broker cannot solve, the CPA cannot solve, a property manager cannot solve. Those are ones where, for instance, they've got a battle with a neighboring property owner over a property line, or trespass, or use of that wrongful use, or there are some old liens on the property. Maybe they want to sell it, or maybe they want to buy it, and they discover these crazy old liens from 50 years ago that are just still there. What do they do? How do they deal with those?
Right.
Those are cases in my real estate practice that I handle, and most of them are in court litigation. We're very successful in finding solutions for clients. So I do get many referrals from real estate agents, brokers, who have clients with properties, and so we help solve it, and it helps everybody.
That's great to know, because we all hear sometimes things happen, clients call, and I always say, you know what, you have to go to an attorney. And do you have a real estate attorney? No, I didn't. I hadn't met one. So it's actually good, because that means in 17 years I didn't need one, which I'm happy, but I know that some of my clients needed one.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have anybody to refer them to.
And it's not through any fault of their own. The reality is, in our legal system in California, the more somebody owns property, the longer they own it, likely chances that they're going to have a legal issue. Because of what the city is doing, or because of those neighboring property owners, or maybe a tenant. I do some eviction work for landlords, commercial and residential as well.
That's great.
And owning property can be exciting. It certainly can be profitable, but it has its headaches sometimes.
Yeah, it's a liability as well sometimes. Yeah,
Yes.
especially when you have tenants, and owning a house sometimes, just your neighbors, sometimes it's it's trouble. Okay, so now where are you located? I know you said here in Chula Vista. What's your address?
Address of our office is 2563 Mast Way, over on, it's about 3 blocks from your office.
So it's Fenton and then Herald.
Herald,
You go into Herald, and it's
in the Venture Office Park back there.
right in there. Okay.
Yep.
You guys are getting a new building right outside Herald. What is that? Is that a hotel?
Yeah, there's a hotel. It's Hampton Inn, I think. Yeah, on Fenton.
Yeah,
You're
that's
right
gonna be
near
the second one after like 30 years here in East Lake. Finally,
I know, there were
right?
like no hotels. Like, family would come into town, and
No.
if some family had already filled up our house, we're like, where are they going to be? They have to go way over to the other side of Chula Vista or somewhere.
Right.
So it's great that we have these new hotels.
East Chula Vista is growing. And you know what? I'm so happy that, because we've had a couple of attorneys from your same complex there that came, CPAs, and it's exciting that they don't have to. Before it was like, we have to go downtown, because that's where most of the attorneys were at.
Yeah.
And now it's amazing that we have a lot of you guys here in Chula Vista local. So you know the area, you really know the families here, because your family lives here as well. Your kids go to the schools here.
Yep.
So it's great.
Yeah, and I speak Spanish. And
Oh, you speak Spanish as well.
Yeah,
Great.
and so I have many clients. Either we speak in both, or they're more comfortable explaining their situation in Spanish, or some who don't speak much English, and my staff and I are able to work with them very
Hablan
easily.
español también.
Sí.
Ya saben, habla español, para que si no entienden inglés, tienen cualquier problema en sus finanzas, no se esperen hasta que ya estén así, como hasta aquí, antes de que estén así, hay soluciones. So just remember, being an attorney. Is there anything else you want to add that you think we didn't cover? Of the basics, I'm sure there's tons of things
Yes.
we cover.
Yeah, if you had 3 hours, I could regale you on all the fun stuff of bankruptcy. I think that one of the things to keep in mind is, I remind people, bankruptcy, if somebody files for bankruptcy, again, it's not like some admission of failure or something. It's often the next good strategic step. They're thinking about, where do I want to be in 3 years? Where do I want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, financially, wealth. If for whatever reason, their own mistakes or things beyond their control, they got into financial trouble, they owe it to themselves to look at all of the options that the law gives them.
Right.
And this is one of those options.
Right, to start clear. Yes, are there some questions? Okay.
Yes. Do you have to file?
Whose question?
Oh, it's Victoria Thomas.
Okay.
Do you have to file on everything on your credit? Example, car loan that you're currently on, or credit card with low balance?
Do you want to repeat the question? Because I don't know if they can hear it here on the microphone. Do you want to repeat
Okay,
the question?
so the question was, if you file for bankruptcy, do you have to list everything, all of
Yeah.
your debts, like your cars?
Even if it's a low
Or a low credit card balance.
Yeah.
So the answer is, in general, yes. If I have a client and they have a low credit card balance, like say they owe $200 on their, and they want to keep that card.
Yeah.
Best thing is just to pay it down to 0 before we file. Then we don't have to list it, and most likely the credit card company will keep it open. But if there's even $1 on it at the time of filing, whether or not we listed it, the credit card company will close it, because they'll just assume that it would be discharged. Now with cars, we do have to list the car because it's an asset. We have to list all of the assets that the person owns. And then we have to list the car loan, because that's a secured debt, secured by the car. But that's okay in most cases. The person still can keep their car if they can keep up with the payments. There are ways that we can make that, in fact, useful for their credit later, so that, as they're paying month by month later, it's still helping their credit to rebuild. So, but yeah, in general, we got to list everything.
Okay, and then the other question was.
I can see them here. Let me, because that way. So how long is the process?
Well, with Chapter 7, it's about 3 months.
3 months.
And
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. That's a simpler kind of bankruptcy. And usually, once I get all of the data, the documents I need from the client to prepare it, my staff, my paralegals, Erika, Salawa, she's very good at putting it together, helping me put it together very, very quickly. Within 3 or 4 business days, we can have it ready. File it takes about 3 months till when we get the discharge order.
Oh, wow.
Chapter 13, because the person's in a payment plan, that's going to be 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And
For
so
to
that's
get
how
the
long it
discharge.
takes. Exactly.
And so I know we went over some of this already, so I'll say the question and he'll give a quick answer. You might want to go back and watch the whole video if you started with us late. But the other one was, how many times can you go bankrupt?
Well, during a person's lifetime, there's not a specific limit, but the law says you can only get a Chapter 7 discharge once every 8 years. You can get a Chapter 13 discharge if you file more than 4 years after a Chapter 7. And there are some different permutations.
Okay.
So we look at, if somebody comes to me and they say, I need to file for bankruptcy to deal with this debt, but I had a prior bankruptcy, I'll first ask, when did you file and what chapter of bankruptcy, and did you complete that case? Did you get a discharge?
Okay. So there's no limit, but you do have to wait a few years to do it again.
Yeah.
So it just depends how long you live, Ana. It's Ana Hueso that's asking that.
Victor has a question.
Okay.
How long does it stay in your credit?
I think, it's, in general, a bankruptcy will be on your credit for about
to
10
10
years, up to 10 years, like a foreclosure. But it does not ruin the credit for 10 years.
Yeah.
Credit will start, you can rebuild that pretty
But
quickly.
it will show.
Yes.
It will show, but it doesn't affect your credit score anymore.
Yeah.
Or your purchase power for a car or a house. And
Right.
the other question was, yeah, it was the same thing that you said. How long does it stay on your record? So we already covered that. So these are all the people that are here watching us.
Oh,
so
great.
we'll say some of the names. Just we are not going to
Welcome
say
to you
hi
all.
to everyone, but I know there's some here from Chula Vista, from National City, from Hap and Murrieta. Josdana is from La Paz. So she's,
Oh, wow.
yeah, she's a realtor down there.
Down
She's
there.
always watching us. Salvador, thank you for watching us. We also have Maritza Balbuena. Hola, hermosa. Gracias por estar con nosotros. América, Ana Hueso, Esperanza Close. ¿Quién más tenemos aquí? Erika Gutierrez, Lili Charqueño, Michelle Ackerman. Hola, hermosa. Jassy Jazz, ¿cómo estás? Sandra, mi hermosa coach, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Eri, Noemí López, Bonita, Victoria, gracias por estar con nosotros. Verónica Murrieta, ya pronto vamos a listar tu casa. Laura Talamantes, ella es también abogada, yo creo que la conoces.
¿Quién?
Laura Talamantes, I think.
Yeah, she's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Laura.
Here.
Oh,
So
great.
she's here watching you,
Oh, good.
supporting you. Jenny, Meraf, okay.
She's a great immigration attorney, by the way, if you haven't
Yes,
met
you know
her
what? You
already.
can feel that. Like when she was here, like the way she was
Mhm.
talking, you can tell she's very passionate about all the immigration laws
Yeah.
and all
Yeah,
that.
and very, very competent.
Yes.
She knows it backwards and forwards.
That's great, and she's right by your office as well, right?
I
Close by?
think her office is on the other side of Chula Vista. I
that's
think.
true. She's on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's on Church Street.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember. Sorry, Laura. I remember exactly where you are now. So there's many more of you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you share this video if you know anybody. You know, sometimes people are not going to tell you they're going through a financial hardship, but you'll be able to notice. You know, they don't want to go out with you anymore. They kind of want to stay home. So, you know, a lot of people do crazy stuff when they're going through that because, you know, they're embarrassed. So make sure you reach out and say, you know what, there's this video. Come and see this attorney. The first half an hour is free. So just remember, if you're going to come to see an attorney and they're giving you half an hour free, have your questions ready. Don't come here and then try to talk about the whole story. Have
Good
some
point.
kind of order because an appointment could take 2 hours. So you want to make sure that if you're going to get a free half an hour, that you have everything, like your bullet points, what you want to talk about and the answers you want to get. Right?
Yep, that's a very good point, and that really is very helpful when
Right.
they've got everything, you know, their questions organized. Sometimes, of course, I will have a lot of questions, but that helps me to sort of figure out, okay, what are the issues and what's the best option.
Yeah.
But you know, if they're efficient, I can be efficient, and then we can get things done.
Right,
Really
if they're
well,
prepared.
really
So
quickly.
yeah, always
Mhm.
remember, be prepared with your questions and with the things you want to resolve. That's the main thing. Why am I here? What is the thing that I'm trying to resolve, and what are my issues? What is this, you know, financial hardship causing in my life? And it's easier because otherwise we just start talking about everything and then we don't, you know, the half an hour goes by, we don't
yeah.
finish.
And my my phone number is on the program, or okay.
So
great.
we are, as soon as we finish the show, after I go in there and I edit the top of the video, and then I'll have your information there.
Okay,
Your
super.
name, phone number, office address, and then they can just reach you. Because people will keep watching this video and they'll keep asking questions. So if you have somebody in your team that can go back and then just log in to the page and see the questions,
Oh,
and then they can just
Okay.
type in your phone number.
Sure.
But we always just tell them, like, go back to the top of the video and please call the attorney directly.
Don't forget the rest.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna give out 2 Starbucks gift cards. So we'll have you pull out a name here. Like we have this little sound.
here we go. Can I open it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So the name here is Ana Hueso.
Ana Hueso. Oh my God, we're gonna stop putting your name in
Felicidades.
here. You always get one. Just
Last
kidding.
week was a sister.
Right.
All right. So
We
another
love
one.
you guys. Yes,
Let's
one
see,
more.
One more. Here we go. It's Erika Gutierrez.
Erika Gutierrez. Yeah, you have to come and pick it up. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you to the winners. And if you guys have any questions, remember his name is going to be on top of this video. And then you guys can call him directly or go to his office, which is here in Eastlake. Chula Vista. We're going to leave you guys with a video of a property that we have. We have this house in San Diego and in the Encanto area. And it's a beautiful house, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, totally remodeled, and we just had a price reduction. So please watch the video. Come and see us this weekend. We're having an open house on Saturday, 12 to 4, so come and see it if you like it. And if you have any questions, please always give us a call. Remember, we're here to help you out. Faby Gonzalez, Cobo Banker West, and we're here at Good Day Chula Vista. Thank you, Jason, so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank
Nice
you for inviting me.
meeting
It was
you.
great to be here.
Ciao, ciao.